when the war began, I gave up my job. I got my car wrapped in the Ukrainian flag, and I fundraise and take 4x4s and ambulances over there. I've been in many frontline positions and traveled just about all of the country. Never been to Odessa or some of the most beautiful spots, but I've been to Bakhmut, I've been to Kramatorsk and other places where there's heavy fighting. The Ukrainian people, I feel most at home. I think they're closer to Scottish mentality, sense of humour than any other European country. And I think we have forgotten very quickly what day-to-day life is like for people in Ukraine. I heard our First Minister's wife speaking about the horror of a drone. And I'm just thinking, wow, guys, this is daily. I've been in an apartment listening to a drone hovering 100 meters away from me. Air raid sirens are daily occurrences. The last couple of weeks have been quite quiet, but for the last 607 days, this has been normal. There are somewhere in the region of 10 million people who are not in their home country. They are refugees all throughout the world. Some of the horrors that have happened in Ukraine that are probably not suitable to talk about on the radio at this time have been daily occurrences. There are 35,000 plus children that have been kidnapped and are missing. So while I understand how horrible the situation is in Israel, it's not comparable in any way to the horrors that are happening in Ukraine.
Well, thanks, David. Look, thank you for your efforts. And I think what's been amazing about the Ukraine conflict is how the United Kingdom has come together as a whole. You know, in the House of Commons, the Scottish National Party have been incredibly supportive. The Liberal Democrats, the Labour Party and the Conservative Party have all felt that what was going on was wrong and all wanted to help and do something about it. And I think, that's a moment in time where, many other political debates are very divided and there's a lot of unhappiness in the body of the country about lots of different issues. But on this, I think there's been a large support. And I think the fact you've done lots of work around humanitarian issues is just as important. And
I think it's amazing that people can't see through the light with this war in Ukraine. It's very obvious that this is US imperialism, this is a proxy war, this is a US war, and we tag behind. It's about maintaining US homogeny and the expansion of NATO. They don't care about the rights of Ukrainian people. We literally seem to just can't really think for ourselves in the UK anymore. We just tag along with America. In America, you see, there's over 130 billion has been spent in Ukraine, and it would take 20 billion to end homelessness. They just don't, and they have no reason to really be getting involved in this civil war, and they have no reason to militarize and police the world. It's a proxy war, and they send these cluster bombs in, which are illegal in many countries, and it's just insane. I really just can't quite wrap my head around the idea that people think that we need to go and save these Ukrainian people. It's a civil war. There could have been peace a long time ago if we would have created a settlement. Help to create, I just think it's insane. All we're doing is just creating, we're literally funding billions of pounds and dollars, investing in death. And this money that people talk about circulating back into the economy, it's not actually circling back into most people's wallets. It will be circling back into very few amounts of people involved in supplying arms.
OK, Sarah. So, Sarah, who invaded Ukraine? America or Russia? Right.
Russia, okay.
So hang on.
There's civil wars in Sudan. Do we go there? No.
Okay. So in 1939, Sarah, in 1939, when the Nazis invaded Poland, should we have gone to war?
How is that comparable?
Because at the time,
the actual example.
Well, the Nazis weren't invading Britain in 1939.
But Russia's not invading us, are they?
No, but nor was the Nazis weren't invading us.
There's always been so much, so many of the people already living in Kiev and in the Donbass were Russians anyway. And it's just, that you genuinely, as the Defence Secretary, are saying that this is comparable to when the Nazis were gassing 6 million Jews in Germany? And
no, Sarah, I'm just hang on, Sarah. My point is this, right? Russia, not America, not Britain, no one else, invaded Ukraine. Ukraine has a right to defend itself, does it not? Article 51 of the United Nations, which I'm sure you support, do you think Ukraine has a right to defend itself?
America, they're not going to win the war, so what's the point of this? We're just funding
No, Sarah, can you just answer the questions? Do you think Ukraine has a right to defend itself?
Sure.
Right. Do you think allies, like Britain came to the aid of Poland, has a right to support countries defending itself from them being invaded by a country, and we can see what Russia did in places like Bucha, has a right to defend themselves? Are we allowed to help them?
Well, why? If there was something to, if we're comparing World War II to a civil war, I don't really think it's comparable.
It's not a civil war, Sarah. It's not a civil war. Russia invaded Ukraine, Sarah.
Ukraine, which is like it's essentially a civil war. Why do we?
No. Are you saying that Ukraine is not a country, Sarah?
Of course, it's
a sovereign country.
It's about a regional dispute, and the reason that we feel so entitled to. It's just amazing. Like, people really can't see that.
Sarah, I don't think anyone's entitled. I think what we saw is that one sovereign nation, Ukraine, that until a few years ago Russia seemed to recognise, including Crimea, being invaded by another country that, by the way, doesn't share your or I view of human rights, invade another country, right? That was and we can't belittle it and say, oh, it's just some regional conflict. Just let's let it go. These are people's countries and their rights, and you just want us to just ignore it. And what happens when Russia follows through and decides it's going to have Estonia back? And what's going to happen? I mean, that is the lesson in the comparison with the World War, was that people tried to appease Adolf Hitler. He had a plan already to dominate Europe. And that's why Britain, in the end, went to the aid of Poland. It wasn't going to stop there. But according to you, we would have said, oh, well, Poland's just regional. We'll just let it go.
My question is to you, and I'm so grateful to be able to ask you this, is that with Ukraine, we supported Ukraine because Russia invaded its sovereign territory and it annexed an area called Crimea, which is an occupied territory of the Ukraine. So with Palestine, Israel has ultimately occupied its own territory and created its own land, who it calls itself Israel. But yet we don't support Palestine and we don't object to Israel occupying Palestine. But yet with the Ukraine, we object to Russia invading and occupying it. And I'm sorry if it sounds a really simplistic question, but there's a lot of people like me who just don't understand why we support Israel, but we object to Russia, because they're both invaders and occupiers.
Well, Dan, you made a point, and that's what I point about international law and a two-state solution is that, first of all, we don't support Israel with its illegal settlements in parts of the West Bank. It's a matter of record that the UK and many others feel that is wrong and have often raised it, that this is not the right solution, and in fact it undermines the potential of a two-state solution. So we don't support some of the actions of Israel. We do support the action of Israel to defend itself when it comes under terrorist attack, and we do support Israel when it wants to protect its sovereignty in the same way we do Ukraine. That's exactly the same reason. We both support Ukraine and Israel's right of self-defense under Article 51 of the UN, and we both support Ukraine and Israel protecting its sovereign borders. But that doesn't mean to say you can't disagree with either individual or strategic directions that happen. We saw what happened in the United States, in the Middle East, and I think that's one of the challenges we all have. Is all of us in politics in the West is trying to decipher or look for stability actually in the United States political system.
To the point in Ukraine, I am concerned that we kind of have parked that now. I believe that as soon as what kicked off in the Middle East occurred, Putin said to his soldiers, go for it, go for it, go for it. They're not going to be concentrating and they're going to get distracted. And I think, the politics in the US doesn't help as well. And I think we've got to remember, hey, if we park Ukraine and forget about it, he's only going to go on to the next Eastern European country, most likely a member of NATO, and then that's going to pull us in full time. So if we can spend, and this goes on to your defence spending point, I personally think we should be spending a bit more, but we can spend a little now in the grand scheme of things, or park it and spend a lot of money later on dealing with this head on and have a lot more domestic casualties because we would have to fight this ourselves. I think it's very easy for us to say, oh, but Ukraine's quite far away. But in reality, it really isn't. And if they go after a NATO country, then we're right. That's it. We're all in. And I think people get concerned, oh, are we helping too much? But they forget we do have, the deterrent, the MAD policy in the UK, which is there to keep us safe. And, so long as we have that, we are, as safe as we are going to be, and we just need to keep supporting them because they are doing what we at the moment don't wish to do, and we should be very grateful for that. And I think we've demonstrated those values at the moment, housing people and offering equipment. But I think, we need to be aware right at home, right, all this equipment's going, and you've said this to Nick previously, that we were going through old stockpiles, but we're getting to a point now where we're getting through our current stockpiles as well. So we need to be thinking proactively ahead as to how we build back up, and we're prepared for another event or this going on for, this becoming a new Afghan war, like the Russians had in the 80s, where we need to kind of keep them going for, unfortunately, potentially 10 years, because otherwise it's just going to become our direct problem, and it's going to cost us a hell of a lot more money, which we don't currently have.
Yeah, I think your point about sticking at it is absolutely true, and I think the other point you make, which is correct, which is this issue that they are not just fighting for their freedoms; they're fighting for all of us. These Ukrainians are sacrificing their lives, and the very least we can do is stand by them, help them with the training, help them with the equipping them, and make sure that they send that deterrent message by defeating Russia in Ukraine to say, it's not acceptable to do this, and Russia, you need to go back, withdraw, and come to some form of peace.